Kokemachine for real fishing, January 12th, 2026. Today's episode is brought to you by the Durham Pool Mule. If you live in Durham and you have a pool and you need a guy who's going to help you with that pool and do important tasks, pool related, then the Durham Pool Mule is your guy. Where I walked out from here at Sunset Park, it was surprisingly firm in most places. All the way coming out here is all carved up from people driving trucks and stuff. So there's deep grooves. I only fell through into some slushy spots in a few different spots, but this isn't the entire lake. I'm sure there's lots of slush holes out here that I don't even know about because I only came out about 300 meters here and I only hit 2 or 3 slushy spots. So anyway, I'm doing a special report today as a follow-up to all that rain that came on Friday. You guys might recall that I did 4 rushed live reports trying to cover as many of the access points as I possibly could on my way back around the lake after selling clappers in the Birch Grove parking lot. I got Birch Grove, I got Calendar Bay Dock, I got Calendar Bay Centennial Park, and I got Sunset Park, but I couldn't get a signal to broadcast from the Deepwater Point access, and that was in a bad state as well. It was raining for most of those reports, and all the access points looked pretty bad with the exception of Sunset Point here, which looked pretty decent compared to the other ones. Those reports were all pretty rushed, and I don't know if I'll ever do it quite like that again because it was a bit of a mess. And as I was posting things on my Facebook page, I spelt access point 3 different ways, which, you know, is kind of embarrassing, but I was kind of writing it all on my phone in a hurry, trying to get between points as I was broadcasting it all. Like I said, I don't know if I'll ever be doing that again because it was a bit of a scramble, and setting up each live report is like its own thing. You know, you got to set it up, you got to do the thumbnail, yada, yada, yada. It was a lot of work. After I was doing those reports, a lot of water accumulated on the lake. Everybody around was posting pictures of holes flushing like toilets. And then I saw some pictures of a snowmobile caught in a big wet puddle that had formed on top of the ice. I saw a picture of a side-by-side caught in a big puddle. I saw a picture of a ice hut tipped over on its side because, of course, when it's raining like that, there's going to be some crazy winds coming. So we had crazy winds, crazy rain, all sorts of wild puddles forming on the lake, causing problems. And then, of course, we had the slush forming up. And once the slush gets out there, anybody who's dealt with ice conditions knows that slush is the worst, and slush that you can't see is the ultimate worst. I don't have a snowmobile, but my brother and I have been stuck on his snowmobile in slush 2 separate times. All I can tell you is that each time was about a 4-hour, extremely disheartening adventure of trying to inch your way out of a slushy pit where the slush is almost at the top of your boots. And you just know that if it gets to the top of your boots, you are so boned. You might as well buy 2 slushies and just dump them into your boots and go walking around and pretending like it feels fantastic, but it doesn't. I can tell you that. Now here's the thing, is we got warm weather coming up. It's 1 degree now. It's gonna be 0 tomorrow. It's gonna be +1 on Wednesday, I think. It's not even gonna get cold until Wednesday night, where it's going down to -19, and it's gonna be like that on Thursday, and I believe Friday is gonna be cold as well. We also have a lot of snow coming, and that's gonna put weight on the lake. It's gonna push more water up and potentially create more hazardous slush holes all around the lake. So if you're driving a vehicle specifically, in areas that are untested or untraveled, you might come across a crazy slush hole that'll leave you stranded out there. So you definitely need to be very careful, because a lot of times if you like wipe out or any kind of thing in that slush, it's going to be almost the same as falling in the lake, because you're going to be covered in slushy stuff and you're going to have to try to walk home. We're talking hypothermia issues, all sorts of things can happen. You might be walking and you'll be like, I don't know if you guys recall Terminator 2 Judgment Day, that the T-1000, he got frozen up by the liquid nitrogen. He was trying to walk and he was like, that could happen to you if you fall in that slush. You freeze solid, have trouble with mobility, you'll be in a pickle. Let me tell you a story about a guy that I used to know, all right? Big beard, glasses, green hat. Used to live in the Yellock area. One time he was out fishing in that area and it was raining and raining and raining. It was warm and rainy. There was lots of ice, but probably about a foot of water formed on top of the lake, and then about an inch of ice formed on top of that. He went to go out onto the lake because he had left his pop-up hut out there. It was anchored down solidly, but he noticed that some of the anchors were starting to pop. The pop-up was about 1 kilometer out on the lake, and it was extremely windy, and it looked like the anchors were starting to pop loose. In a panic, he went to go walking out on the lake. He realized as he went that the water was almost at the top of his boots, and he was having to stomp through the crust of ice on the top to get moving. At the same time, there was a 90K wind that was blowing right across him. And as he walked, he realized that if he tripped and fell into that water that was on the lake, it would be as bad as falling into the icy lake itself, aside from the risk of sinking. In the end, if he fell into that water, he would have been soaked. It would have been icy, icy cold, and you would have had all the negative things that normally come with dunking yourself in ice water in the middle of wintertime. So what this guy did is he backed up, he sat on the shore, and he watched his pop-up hut completely pull all its anchors, crumple into a ball, and roll a 0.5 kilometer across the lake before it finally stopped. And he couldn't even get out there to retrieve it for like a day and a half, because the winds just continued to be crazy and the lake was just covered in water. And that was the last day that he ever used that pop-up hut, because it was all roughed up after that. The point of the story is that water on top of the ice can create some very hazardous situations. And if you're off the beaten path, you might find yourself driving headlong into a slush pit. And then next thing you know, your engine dies, and then you're stuck in that and you got to walk out of it. And if you don't have big old rubber boots on, you might get a real soaker. And by the time you get back, you might have some serious health implications from freezing your ass. Hopefully, the colder weather by the end of the week will solidify things. And I'll try to do a live update towards the end of the week on how things have improved, what the lake looks like after the cold is hit. Stay tuned. Be careful. Let everybody know where you're going when you're going there. If you're going to drive a vehicle out on the lake, you got to be wary of things, because getting stuck in the slush is no good. Be careful out there, everybody. We'll talk to you guys real soon.